Thank you for joining us this week on Ask a Historian. I'm Matthew Wilkinson, historian with Heritage Mississauga. And each week we ask you to send in your questions and we'll explore the fascinating story of the city of Mississauga together. Thank you for your question, Craig, and a two-part question on exploring some of the street names of old Mississauga and some of the curiosities therein. Your first one is around North Allerton Street in Malton. And one of the oddities of local history is kind of how things get named, and even then in the nuances of naming, how things get misspelled. So your question is around if there's a North Allerton, is there a South Allerton? And the answer is no. The name North Allerton is applied to the street way back in 1855, specifically when the survey for the old Malton town site was registered by John Stoughton Dennis, the surveyor, on October 5th of 1855. And this is the town site that would become the backbone of the Malton area. And the town site was located on 100 acres at the northwest intersection of what was then Holderness Street, now Dairy Road, and Airport Road. The town itself was laid out in conjunction with the Grand Trunk Railway, which came through in 1854. The street names for Old Malton all derive from place names in Yorkshire, England, and not a firm understanding as to why they were all taken from Yorkshire, but indeed you can trace the street names back to Yorkshire, England, and some of them being Naysborough after Naysborough in Yorkshire, Beverley and Harrow after Harrogate in Yorkshire, Beverley being a strong family name in the Yorkshire area, Scarborough after Scarborough in Yorkshire, Studley after Studley Royal Park in Yorkshire, Hull Street named after Kingston upon Hull, also in Yorkshire, and Ripon and Catterick, also from Yorkshire. Catterick is a misspelling of Catterick. But the one you're asking about is North Allerton, and it is actually a misspelling of North Allerton, all one word, which is a town in Yorkshire today. And so historically then as well, in 1854, 1855, it was there as well. So the name inspirations come from place names in Yorkshire, even if John Stoughton Dennis, the surveyor, misspelled them. So that is the origin for North Allerton in Old Malton. And your other question is around Juanita versus Juanita. Juanita, W-A-N-I-T-A, versus J-U-A-N-I-T-A, two street names in Mississauga. And they are phonetically similar, of course, but their origins are very, very different. Juanita Road, that is W-A-N-I-T-A, which is down by the lake shore, just to the east of Port Credit, is part of Mississauga's oldest subdivisions, or one of our oldest subdivisions, known as Hiawatha on the Lake, which was surveyed in 1921. Many of the names in the subdivision take their inspirations from indigenous words, and those words themselves were inspired by the famous poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow called "The Song of Hiawatha," which was very popular in the early 1920s and inspired the name for the subdivision itself, Hiawatha on the Lake. Juanita is believed to translate as either pale or shapeshifter, although the word with various spellings appears in a number of indigenous dialects with some different meanings. So it's a little uncertain as to the name of what it was, but it's thought to be either pale or shapeshifter, depending on the origin of the word as it's taken. The other one, Juanita Court with a J, it was part of a more recent subdivision, and it was developed in the 1970s, the early 1970s, as part of the Mississauga Valleys subdivision by S.B. McLaughlin. There are many street names in the immediate area that carry female first names as their road name, and these include Daralee, Fiona, Hyacinth, Janine, Karen, Kristen, Michelle, Nadine, Rhonda, and Trisha, as well as Juanita. And although we don't know exactly who Juanita was or who the street is named for, it is believed that the road names were all named for daughters of the planning team from SB McLaughlin and Associates, although this is not confirmed. It's simply written in a note that we have in file that the road names were taken from the names of daughters associated with the planning development team. So again, Craig, thank you for your question, and we'll enjoy exploring other aspects of our local history in future episodes. Thank you, Thomas, for your inquiry around street names and their naming inspirations from the Lorne Park Estates area, one of the treasured areas of historic Mississauga that's still very much visible on our landscape today as some place that's quite different. The Lorne Park Estates is an interesting historical area of Mississauga in that it formed quite differently than many of our other historic villages. It was formed as a summer resort company, specifically the Toronto and Lorne Park Summer Resort Company. The Lorne Park, the name Lorne Park, although applied to the historic post office north of Lakeshore Road, the name is thought to be inspired by John Campbell, the Marquess of Lorne, who also served a time as Governor General of Canada. The company that created the summer resort was formed in 1878, and in 1879 the name the Lorne Park Association was established, and as part of that the Lorne Park Hotel opened. This was later rechristened as Hotel Louise, named after the Marquess of Lorne's wife, Princess Louise. In 1886, the company was reformed as the Toronto and Lorne Park Summer Resort Company, and this is basically establishing summer cottages in a wealthy resort siting here in historic Mississauga, although the people who were members of the resort company and had cottages here were largely wealthy Torontonians. The hotel itself was remodeled in 1889 by renowned architect Edmund Burke, again rechristened Hotel Louise, the hotel survived until 1920 when it was lost to fire. But the story of Lorne Park Estates is a fascinating one, and you can explore it. There is a wonderful book on Lorne Park Estates, well worth the treasure if you're interested in more in the area. This I cannot recommend a finer resource. It's called The Village Within the City: The Story of Lorne Park Estates. But specific, Thomas, to your question is around the road names, and you'll notice many of the names, as you said, were named after people or surnames of people, or what seems to be, and others of poets, and you're bang on both of them. A number of the roads were named after early directors. Now, some of these roads are no longer on the landscape today. What was surveyed and what was actually opened were somewhat different. But some of the names named after directors from the original Lorne Park Summer Resort Company. McConnell Avenue, named after Nevin McConnell, who was president of the Toronto Park Association, that sold the property to the Toronto and Lorne Park Summer Resort Company in 1886. So that's Nevin Campbell. He lived between 1837 and 1916. Roper Avenue, named for Frederick Roper, who was a president of the Toronto and Lorne Park Summer Resort Company. Stockwell Avenue, named after John William Stockwell, a director of the same company, as were Henderson Avenue, named for W.R. Henderson, Bousted Terrace, named for James Bellingham Bousted, a Toronto politician, but also a director of the company. Lugsden Avenue, named for William Lugsden, a Toronto businessman and director of the company. Campbell Avenue, named for Paul Campbell, director of the Toronto Lorne Park Summer Resort Company as well, as was Hillman Avenue, which was closed and probably never opened, named for George Hillman, another director. But also, what's interesting in there are some of the directors do not get street names, and we don't know why or what the reason behind. But names like Earls, Jacoby, Burke, and Perry all served as directors, but do not find their place names. Other roads were intended but never opened. Venn Avenue, Neville Avenue, McIntyre Crescent, and Orient Avenue never opened as part of the original plan. But you are right also that a number of the streets reflect on poets, namely Moore Avenue, named for Irish writer, poet, and playwright Thomas Moore. Whittier Crescent, named for poet and abolitionist John Greenleaf Whittier. Longfellow Avenue, named for a noted American poet and educator Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Sangster Avenue, named for Canadian poet Charles Sangster. And Tennyson Avenue, named after poet laureate Lord Alfred Tennyson, the first Baron Tennyson. Burns Avenue, named for the famed Scottish poet and lyricist Robbie Burns. And Chaucer Avenue, named for English poet and author Geoffrey Chaucer. So that's just some of the name origins associated with Lorne Park Estates, an absolutely fascinating part of our city of Mississauga, and something we can explore in much more great detail in future episodes. So thank you, Thomas, for your question. Our last part of Ask a Historian this week focuses again on the topic of royal visits, following up on a previous episode of Ask a Historian in which we interviewed a royal historian, Carolyn Harris. In organizing for that episode, it became very apparent that we had a lot of connections to royal visits here in historic Mississauga, specifically through the location of the Malton Airport, or what is now the Pearson International Airport. And so the idea being, how many royal visits have come to Mississauga, and kind of with a little bit of a smirk, we can say most of them. However, Mississauga was not necessarily the destination, but rather that Pearson Airport became the transit point for arrivals and departures of visiting royals on various tours that they've taken. So almost every royal visit that came to Toronto or Southern Ontario since 1951 has had some connection to Pearson International Airport, formerly the Malton Airport. Of course, the bulk of that airport is located entirely within what is now the city of Mississauga. Beginning in 1951, on October 12th, 1951, the Princess Elizabeth made her first royal visit to Toronto prior to becoming queen. Accompanied by her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, they received a fanfare of a welcome at Malton Airport, and they were driven to Toronto, the old City Hall, where Princess Elizabeth was welcomed by the Mayor of Toronto, Mayor Hiram McCallum, and paid her respects to the Toronto war dead and attended a civic recognition reception. Another one of the more famous visits to royal visits to the area, including connecting to Pearson and what would become Mississauga, was Princess Margaret, who made a royal visit to Canada from July 26th to August 11th of 1958. On Wednesday, July 30th of 1958, she arrived in Malton, where she was greeted by the Lieutenant Governor and the Premier of Ontario. The meeting, or the greeting, and the arrival of the princess was covered in the press. Party to that was our Reeve, Mary Fix, was presented to Princess Margaret, and a picture shows their greeting at the time. That was in 1958. In 1967, our then Reeve Robert Speck greeted Her Royal Highness Princess Alexandra and her husband, the Honourable Angus Ogilvie, arriving in Malton at the airport in June of 1967. The princess and her husband were here for 27 days, and they visited Toronto, Vancouver, Victoria, Banff, Calgary, Edmonton, Whitehorse, Yellowknife, Jasper, Hay River, Regina, Brandon, Winnipeg, Ottawa, Montreal, and a stop in Pearson was along their itinerary. In 1979, the Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth II's mother, was on a 6-day tour, and she came to Toronto for the 120th running of the Queen's Plate. She was greeted at the airport in Malton by Mayor Hazel McCallion. On Wednesday, November 4th, 2009, Charles, the Prince of Wales, along with Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, had a packed 11-day schedule with a tour of the country around Ontario. The Royals had several stops planned: Toronto, Hamilton, Niagara on the Lake during their 3-day stay in the province as part of their 11-day tour, and part of that involved a stop at Pearson International Airport and driving into Toronto before taking a car trip down to Niagara on the Lake. In July 2010, Queen Elizabeth II, along with her husband Prince Philip, flew from Toronto Pearson Airport just after 1 p.m. And they shook hands upon arrival at the airport. They shook hands with Prime Minister Harper before climbing the stairs to a waiting Canadian Forces plane, and took off for the other components or other legs of their tour. And in 2012, Prince Charles, again along with Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall, passed through Pearson International Airport on May 21st, 2012, as part of Queen Elizabeth's II Diamond Jubilee celebration. So again, we've had lots of passing connections to royal visits, notably again passing through and to and from Pearson International Airport over the years, and there were others beyond just what we've talked about here. So keep digging, keep searching, and keep finding those royal connections. They're fascinating ways to look at the story of this place. Thank you. Thank you for spending some time with us here at Ask a Historian and exploring other fascinating chapters of the story of the city of Mississauga. And we look forward to exploring other aspects of our history with you in future episodes of Ask a Historian. So please keep sending in your questions.